Dear friends and members of University UMC here in Austin, Texas, as we hear about the United Methodist Church and the Global Methodist Church in local and national news, I want to share with you a few thoughts about how we got here and to also offer some reflections. Our church law, the Book of Discipline, currently states that persons who are openly gay shall not be ordained as pastors. It further states that pastors shall not officiate at same-sex weddings. There are persons and churches just like you here at University UMC who have been resisting this language for many years. The only body that can change the Book of Discipline is the General Conference, which meets every 4 years. Because of the pandemic, it has been difficult and challenging for this global body to gather, and so there is a delay until 2024 for the next conference. Waiting for change in the Book of Discipline on this matter is exhausting, to say the least. But you have been persistent in your pursuit of inclusivity and justice. It was over 10 years ago that you as a congregation voted to affiliate with Reconciling Ministry Network. Reconciling Ministry Network advocates for the full inclusion of all LGBTQIA+ persons into the full life of the church. You have a history of resisting the harmful language in the Book of Discipline, and by doing so, work powerfully within the church for change. I am inspired by your witness and proud to serve alongside you as one of your pastors. The number of persons and the number of congregations resisting and working for change is growing. And I find this to be evidence that the beloved community is emerging in and among and through us. But there are other people who, of course, have a different perspective, believing, for example, that there is a lack of accountability. Others say that this is not about inclusivity, but rather about scriptural authority and orthodoxy. In response, some congregations that are more conservative began exploring the possibility of becoming independent or perhaps affiliating with a new denomination. The Global Methodist Church is one such new denomination, a place for congregations to go once they disaffiliate from the UMC. I have to name that I am somewhat relieved by all this news, for it will likely provide space for persons who disagree to more fully live out their faith convictions, including space for progressive congregations like us to wholeheartedly embrace our commitment to full inclusion. As a lifelong United Methodist, I'm also sad. People who have been in ministry together for decades now find that their relationships are more strained than ever, and it's painful. I'm also concerned as I consider places throughout our large state where there is no open, safe, and welcoming Wesleyan community of faith for persons who are queer and allies. I offer these thoughts. With persons and churches deciding to leave and stay, there are unknowns. This is perhaps always the case when we look to the future. There are things we do not yet know. But there are things we do know. Here's what I know. I know that the Spirit is alive and powerfully present at places like University UMC, where intellectual curiosity meets deep spirituality as we follow our understanding of Jesus's command to love God, neighbor, and self. We don't take the Bible literally, we take it seriously as we look to prophetic writings like Micah, as we seek to do justice and love mercy and kindness and walk humbly with God. University UMC, you are a vibrant community filled with lifelong disciples, a growing community as new visitors and guests come here because they are excited about what God is doing among us. I also know, friends, that the conversation about inclusivity does not go away just because a congregation decides to disaffiliate. In my own experience in ministry, I'm taught that there will be persons in those communities who will one day raise the question and concern about inclusion. Someone will invite their GMC pastor into their story of being gay. A church leader will question their previous assumptions and preconceived stereotypes. Someone will advocate for their grandchild or friend and begin resisting the stance of exclusion. I also know that from the beginning, our denomination has been one of growing apart and coming together and growing apart and coming together again. This pattern began at the very beginning when the Methodist movement broke away from the Church of England. Many years later, when the Methodist Episcopal Church was formed, the Methodist Episcopal Church South would break off only to reunite many years later. In the 1960s, in the late 1960s, the United Methodist Church was birthed when two congregations merged together. This is another chapter for us, the people called Methodist. I also know the United Methodist Church still has work to do, including removing the harmful language from the Book of Discipline that discriminates against persons of the queer community. Some progressive churches have already left the United Methodist Church through the years in order to distance themselves from the denomination's restrictive disciplinary language. While I've only been your pastor for about a year and a half, I know that at times this conversation, this question, bubbles up among some of you. Why should we remain United Methodist? I want you to know that as your senior pastor, I am not here to make decisions for you. Instead, I desire to walk alongside you in these complex decisions that we make together. And as your senior pastor, I want you to know that I am so proud of your prayerful discernment through the years. I'm grateful for your leadership, including your witness in the public square. When politicians and government officials speak with harmful rhetoric and work to implement harmful legislation, you speak up and you speak out for all persons of sacred worth. As I consider your witness and faithfulness, I'm reminded of something that I heard Brian McLaren share earlier this year. He was talking about Christians who were wondering and questioning about whether they should leave their faith community because of their convictions. He said that there seemed to be two types of people who left defiantly and people who stayed complicitly. People who left defiantly and people who stayed complicitly. And then he went on to say that he believed that there was a third way and a third decision. And he said that third way was to stay defiantly. Staying defiantly, that reminds me of you here at University UMC, you who resist. If you are a member or a friend here at University UMC, I'm here for you should you have any questions or just want to visit. And early in the new year, I will be looking at some times for conversation about these matters for those who are interested. And if you are wrestling with your connection to the wider denomination, I want you to know that my commitment to being your pastor is not dependent upon you being at peace with all things UMC. If you are listening to this and you are at a church that has made the decision to disaffiliate or is planning to do so, and you do not wish to disaffiliate, I want you to know that I long for connection with you. I welcome you. You can find my contact information on our church website, uumc.org. Here at University UMC, at the beginning of every one of our worship services, we begin with these words. No matter who you are, and no matter where you happen to be on your faith journey or your life journey, you are welcome here. We are learning together what it means to be community across geography, and we welcome you to UUMC. Above all, know that you are beloved. And University UMC, thank you for being a place of unconditional love and justice in action here in the heart of Austin. What a joy to be one of your pastors.